Can a $45 controller compete with a $100 controller? The Asus ROG Raikiri, a licensed wired Xbox and PC controller with 2 programmable back buttons. Gamesir G7, a licensed wired Xbox and PC controller with 2 programmable back buttons. The Raikiri will cost you $100 or 105 British pounds, comes with a very high quality USB cable. The Gamesir G7 costs $45 or 50 British pounds, come with a high quality USB cable and an extra wide faceplate. The Raikiri is designed just like an Xbox controller, weighs 222 grams on my scales. Even the textured back feels the same as the standard series controller. The triggers are a bit wider with matte paint and feel very good. The top back shell is straight instead of the curve and feels better under the fingers. The back buttons are in the middle and can be avoided if needed, more on those later. The overall feel of the controller is on par with the standard series controller. The G7 is a bit wider and the grips get narrower towards the edges, makes a little bit of a different in-hand feel. Also, I noticed my index finger makes a different angle landing on the triggers. The back grips are rubberized, feels really nice to hold, but do accumulate heat in long gaming sessions, but nothing unbearable. The faceplate is removable and at times kind of slightly moves in hand. Feels awkward, but thankfully doesn't happen a lot. The back buttons are under the fingers and more on those later. But I personally really like the placement of the back buttons. And my last issue with this one is the left sticks at times make a weird noise with the anti-friction ring. This happened on the G7 SE and happens for me on the G7 as well. In certain aspects feels very premium, like the ABXY buttons and the grips, but then the faceplate wobble and the noise of the left sticks spoils the experience a little bit. So the Raikiri has the membrane ABXY buttons and their size and placement feels very much like the standard series controller. They do have a little bit of a wobble, but the resistance feels very nice. So if you're used to the standard controller, these will feel actually right at home. The D-pad is again like the standard controller, so it has the metal dome under the membrane. Feels crisper to sort of press. Same thing with the other face buttons. They have those metal dome under the membrane. So very sharp feeling presses. They are in a straight line here, so a little bit different. And again, the Xbox button also has that sharper feeling response. So all in all, the face buttons are just like a standard series controller. They could have been better, but for me, they performed absolutely perfectly. I didn't have any issues whatsoever. Gamesir has implemented micro switches in the ABXY buttons and they do feel amazing to press. I actually prefer these over the Razer Wolverine ones because the resistance here seems to be perfect. Very stable and the press feels very, very satisfying. The D-pad here, so I opened this again, it does feel like tack switches, but it's metal dome conductive sort of plate underneath the membrane mechanism. Feels very, very nice to press. And the other face button has a similar thing going on. They have the metal dome film under the membrane. So all the other buttons feel very tactile. I do have to say, the overall feel of these buttons and the experience while using them is hands down better on the G7 when compared to the standard controller and the Raikiri. So G7 for the face button definitely wins the category. Raikiri's trigger are a little bit different than the standard controller. They're a bit wider, they have no texture, but the matte paint and the resistance is very nice. I never had any accidental presses of these. They are also very quiet when you press them without the trigger stops engaged. And we do have a one-stage trigger stop that cuts out about 80% of the trigger pull, and introduces some noise. One good thing is when you engage the trigger stop, it auto-adjusts the maximum dead zone, which is a very, very handy feature. Some of the controller lack this, and it can be painful going in system settings and adjusting the dead zones manually. Bumpers are very good. Again, no texture, but the matte feeling is nice, and you can actuate them from anywhere. They have a bit of a dampen press, so it doesn't make that much noise, but in practice worked absolutely perfectly. Battlefield, spotting the enemies and shooting, not a problem. Call of Duty, using field upgrades or your lethal and tactical, not an issue whatsoever. So triggers and bumpers are very good on the Raikiri. And the G7's trigger design is very different, very flat sort of top, have a very, very nice texture. There are no trigger stops, and I did mention in my G7 SE review that these feel very light to me. I wish they had more resistance, especially now that they don't have the trigger subsystem. There are a lot of software options. They have a hair trigger options because these are Hall effect triggers as well. So you can enable that and, they will actuate instantly. But the lack of the trigger stop definitely kinds of like, like a big deal for me. I do really like the trigger stop system. I'll take like any kind of trigger stop, even if it only takes out 50% of the pull, over not having any trigger stop system at all. The bumpers are very nice here, a nice angle. They have some texture. They're a little bit more louder than the Raikiris, but they feel very, very nice to press. And it's not like they have any dead spot. You can actuate them from anywhere. So if you're holding it, pressing it from the inside of the finger or the tip, whatever, they actuate everywhere. Never had any issues with the bumpers. So bumpers are definitely a tie, but triggers, I would definitely say Raikiri wins in the trigger department. Alright, so Asus have decided to go with the 2 back button design on the normal Raikiri. They've placed them in the middle, so if somebody wants to grip the controller without actuating them, you can do that. I personally don't like this. I would rather adjust my grip and have the buttons underneath my fingers that I need to use to actuate them. But I do have to say one thing, that texture here and the way these are designed, I did get used to them, and I did have to adjust my grip. I wasn't like, gripping normally and moving. I just kept my middle fingers onto these buttons, a little bit higher on the right hand side and a little bit lower on the left. And using them, it's a good press. They are quiet and they can be actuated from anywhere, and the resistance is good. No accidental actuations, especially how the fingers land. I do wish that they sort of reached out a little bit more, so I didn't have to stretch my fingers that much with the grip. But using them, time jumps in Call of Duty, whatever, jump and crouch, they worked absolutely perfectly for me. The biggest downside is you cannot map their functions on the controller itself. You have to use the armory crate. But as a 2-button design, once you get used to it, not that bad. So G7's back buttons are placed under the fingers, and I have to say, like good position, good size. I wish the resistance was a little bit more, but the press is very satisfying. You just have to adjust your grip a little bit. Once you get used to them, work absolutely perfectly. Your fingers are just there. I am somebody who actually likes to use the tip of the finger. So I am like, moving every time to press it. And at times I'll literally just adjust my grip a little bit. So instead of gripping it normally, I'll just keep my finger up there whilst using the controller. But I did, once you get used to them, they are very, very nice to use. The best thing is you can map them on the controller itself with the multifunction button. And you can also have 3 different profiles. So on the fly, you can switch a profile and change their power function very quickly. So back buttons, yes, hands down, the G7 wins. So the Raikiri is using the Xbox size thumbstick caps, and the material is very grippy, which is quite nice, but I like to use Control Freaks, and the big plus for me is Xbox Control Freaks fit here perfectly. I don't need to modify them or anything. They literally just fit here very snugly, no problem whatsoever. There's decent amount of room around the shaft, but this housing is sort of raised up a little bit more, and use the precision. If you're using the precision, is a little bit tight, but they work. If you have a higher enough Control Freak, there it works perfectly. So thumbstick caps, physical design, not bad. No replaceable caps or anything, but I think just being able to use the standard Xbox Control Freaks is a big plus. So Gamesir have gone with a little bit of a different design here. These are PS4, PS5 sort of size thumb grips. And the texture on the corner feels very grippy, very nice. The middle is a bit sort of like slippery one, but very, very good if you don't like to, if you don't put any Control Freaks, whatever, this will feel actually very nice. But if you want to use Control Freaks, Xbox One, no chance of fitting this unless you want to, extend those clips or something with a plier. But PS4, PS5 one, even though they're a little bit tight, but they do fit. Again, the space around the shaft is actually very good. The precision ring use on this is very nice because this housing sort of sits lower. So if you put the precision ring, you have no resistance initially, and then it sort of like give you resistance outwards. Very, very good sort of physical design of the sticks. I wish these were Xbox because you're buying it for an Xbox, so you most likely have an Xbox Control Freak. But it's a bit of an expenditure for me. I mean, I'm very lucky I did have the PS4, PS5 Control Freaks, but if you're thinking about it, and you do like Control Freaks, that's a bit of a thing. You'd have to buy the PS4, PS5 ones. But if you don't use Control Freaks, this is actually very, very good design. Okay, here in Gamepad Tester, you can see the resting values are completely centered, and there's no registration of any kind of input, not even like 1% that tells me there are some built-in dead zones. And I've made sure that in Armory Crate, there are no dead zones applied to the sticks. So Asus is sort of using some kind of dead zones. If I had to guess, because the moment you do a little bit of a push, it starts registering. I would say between 3 to 5%. And personally, I would like the ability to completely disable them. Don't even have the 3 to 5%. I'd like to see some sort of registration at resting values and use the in-game sort of dead zone option if I don't like the drift at the rest position. But yeah, they are minimal. If I test the circularity, you will see that these are actually calibrated quite well. They have 0% error rate. The issue with this is in Call of Duty, you have to push your stick forward and then press. If you are prone, you have to push the stick forward and then press it in to start sprinting again. Now, if you're pushing it forward and it's not hitting dead center, the maximum value, your character don't run. And it like bugged me for an hour why this was going on to me until I realized, oh, okay, because these are so like, that maximum value is such in the middle, I had to reduce them outer dead zone in Call of Duty, like game settings, to be able to then, when you are playing and you completely like go prone and then you want to sprint again. So I had to do that with the left stick. But when it comes to response, even with the standard response curve in Armory Crate, like linear response curve, these do feel absolutely amazing to aim. I do have to say, Gambit used to be like my favorite one, and it's still like, I really like playing on the Gambit, but these are definitely like up there. I really, really like using this for aiming. Whatever they've done with their response, like the linear response is so good. And like I said, the calibration, so normal sticks, usually you hit the 100% before you hit the value, the wall. And it's sort of similar here. It's not that you're going all the way out to get the 100%, you're sort of hitting it a little bit before you hit that physical thumbstick gate. Very nice. Using it with the precision ring or without, I really, really like aiming and everything with this one. I'll quickly show you the precision tester result as well. Okay, now I have the precision tester open, and if I just make a circle, you'll see it'll make a perfect circle. But what we want to see is when we put a precision ring on, like within the circle, what sort of shape it's making, if there's any software sort of a response thing going on, or is it actually calibrated perfectly and it doesn't, do any wonky sort of shapes and stuff. And you can make a circle. So all that, the shape that's coming on the other side, that's just how the precision ring is sitting. But doesn't have any wonky shape or anything going on. Yeah, I think the way these sticks are working, absolutely amazing. Armory Crate does allow you to change the response curve. You can make your custom ones and stuff. That's something if you want to do, but I found the linear one to work so well. And I do think like that's like one of the best features of this controller. All right, so I have the G7 connected now. In the Gamepad tester, you can see I have the dead zones completely disabled. So my right stick, so my sticks are sort of like flipped. So that's the right stick there. You can see I've got over 6% registered at the moment, at rest position. So yeah, this will cause some drift, like over 7% now. But what Gamesir are, the ability to just disable the dead zones and then use in-game, I think it's a really good feature. So if I do the circularity test, we have two different modes the Gamesir Nexus allows us. So this is a very circular one. So we have the 0.4 error rate. And if I put this into the raw mode, which is basically behaving like, it's no software sort of thing going on. If you put it into the raw mode, this gives like a normal potentiometer sort of stick response. And we will get like anything like 9 or 10%. Now in the raw mode, what's happening is, let's say the circular boundary is the game's maximum value. So you are reaching that way before you're hitting the thumbstick gate. So it feels more responsive. So it's kind of a way of getting another response curve, using the Gamesir Nexus software. I really like using the raw mode with no sort of dead zones and a precision ring on this one. So very, very good. I think this is a very good implementation by Gamesir. The options they're giving us, you can have raw mode or the circular one. Do whatever you want to do, how you want to play. Let me quickly show you the precision test results. All right, the G7 is connected to the precision tester. Now, if I move my stick, so this is the circular mode, it will make a circle. And if I just change the profile and go into the raw mode, it will make that, sort of square, rounded, sort of like square thing. Now, what I really like about this one is in the raw mode, I'll just quickly show you with the precision ring that what kind of shape this is making. So this is the raw mode, and if I try to make a circle, it's allowing me to make a circle. And same thing, if I go into the round shape, the circular profile, it will allow me to do the same thing. So they're not doing anything like, everything is being done like outside of the, so whatever movement you're doing inside is very good, like really, really good implementation by Gamesir. And these sticks do perform very well. I do like them in the raw mode a bit more, and I do use the precision ring on the G7 a lot more than any of the other controllers. It's just, I think it's a really good feeling. But yeah, we have like sort of an ability to change the response curve a bit. If you go into the circular one, it might feel a little bit sluggish to you, but having that raw mode, this is really, really good. So for me personally, I love the aiming response and the feel of the Raikiri. But objectively speaking, I would say this would be a tie because Gamesir is giving us a lot of options as well. So Thumbstick category, yeah, will be a tie for me. So conclusion time, guys. The G7 at $45.50 here in UK, it's an amazing deal, I think so. I wish it had trigger stops. If it did, I would say that, you don't need anything else. Very, very, good sort of controller. There are certain things, like I mentioned, the screen with the faceplate wobble in hand and the noise with the left stick at times. But biggest one for me is the trigger stops. If they had trigger stops, like I would probably just get this one and that's it. Aiming, like you said, very, very good. But I do feel that the Raikiri sort of like, the response curve, the thing that they have done with their built-in dead zones, whatever they're doing, feels very, very good. But when we come to the Raikiri, here is the thing. This feels like a PC-first controller because you need the software to map the back buttons. There's nothing you can do on the controller to change the back button mappings. So you do need a PC. Now, while it feels like this is like, the Xbox controller second, if they did not lock this to 250 hertz polling rate, this could have been an amazing option because this could be like the first maybe Xbox style controller that could go to 1000 hertz polling rate. Now I did try unlocking, the polling rate on this one, and the G7 both are locked at 250 hertz, and the X input just showed like, the 4 millisecond response time. So that's a bit of a shame. You do need a PC. As an Xbox gamer, I mean, I'm lucky that I do have a laptop and I use it for work and stuff. So yeah, I was able to change the settings, but if you can't, this is a deal breaker. You do need a PC. So in all honesty, like Raikiri for me is one of those controllers that I absolutely, absolutely love to use. But when it comes to recommending, like, it's like I can't just fully outly just recommend like, oh yeah, this is the most amazing controller. For me, yeah, I absolutely, love using this controller. Every time I'm playing with my brother, I'm not testing anything. And if I'm not using a wireless controller, because sometimes when I'm playing with him, I'll just use claw and just use a standard Xbox controller. But if I'm like, playing competitively with him, we're playing Call of Duty Online, multiplayer, either the Gambit or the Raikiri is in my hands. But when it comes to the G7, it's just such an easy recommendation, guys. Like, honestly, the overall package is just, yeah, absolutely, absolutely good. I do hope the Gamesir will, make a pro model or something, maybe give us 4 buttons and triggers, so like that would be absolutely like mind-blowing. And also like, the price. So I understand that the Raikiri is probably priced for like the retail market. I bought mine from eBuyer, so not from Asus direct. But that's another big factor as well. When a product is going to retailers, it's sort of priced in a way that the retailers have to make some money on top of it. Whereas the G7, you're either buying through Gamesir's Amazon store or Gamesir Direct. There are some other Amazon resellers. I don't know how they purchase theirs or whatever. But it's like a, direct from the manufacturer sort of like purchase thing here. So there is like sort of a price thing. So we taking the benefit for that we, paying less money. Because if this was in the shops, I honestly think this will be like 80, 90 pounds anyways. So yeah, if it comes to, if you're thinking about a sort of like a good experience, I would say G7 definitely. That's just such a niche product. I don't know, like, if it's worth you spending the money. Maybe if it had 4 back buttons, then yes, but yeah, not for that price. Well, that's everything for me, guys. I just want to say thanks to everybody who subscribed. Your support means absolutely, a lot. And yeah, thanks for doing that. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was useful. I hope there was some good info in there. If I left anything out, if there's anything in particular you'd like to know, please do leave me a comment. And if you don't mind, sharing your experience, good or bad, with either of these in the comments, that would really make my day, because that's like a database. Especially I get to experience what other people are experiencing as well. So I would really appreciate that. Once again, thanks a lot for watching this video. Hopefully I'll catch you in one of my other ones. Bye for now.